Well, another week has come and gone since Donald Trump claimed that he would be arrested, and we're still waiting to see whether an indictment will actually come down in New York City. But in that time, Trump has gone from making predictions to launching some dangerous attacks. Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg has been receiving death threats over his investigation into Donald Trump's alleged role in the 2016 hush money payment made to adult film star Stormy Daniels. Now, those threats came on the heels of a series of social media posts from Trump, including one warning of, quote, death and destruction if he were to be charged in that case. Now, one post featured split screen stills as well of Trump holding a baseball bat next to an image of Alvin Bragg. That post has since been taken down. One of Trump's lawyers, Joe Tacopina, talked about these threats on Meet the Press earlier. Take a listen.
Again, I'm not his social media consultant. I think that was an ill-advised post that one of his social media people put up, and he quickly took down when he realized the rhetoric and the photo that was attached to it. But that being
You're
said,
only referring to the baseball bat. He didn't take down the other rhetoric. Here's the thing. We went through January 6th, so it's not like a possibility that Trump's rhetoric creates violence. It's already happened once. Are you not concerned this could happen?
Well, I'm not accepting that proposition that his rhetoric created violence.
Donald Trump might have a lot of thoughts online, but he's taking a different approach in person, bristling when NBC News correspondent Vaughn Hilliard asked about the details of the multiple investigations that he's facing right now on the plane back from his rally yesterday in Waco, Texas. And speaking of multiple investigations, as the Manhattan grand jury is expected to reconvene tomorrow, there are new developments in the dual probes led by special counsel Jack Smith. A federal judge has ruled that former Trump White House aides, including Mark Meadows and Stephen Miller, must testify to a grand jury investigating Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 election. That same judge ruled that Trump's attorney, Evan Corcoran, must testify as well to a grand jury investigating Trump's handling of classified documents. Joining us now to discuss is Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell of California. He's a member of the House Judiciary Committee. Representative, thanks for being with us. It certainly has been, another week after Trump's unsubstantiated arrest claim, still no indictment that we have been hearing from here in New York City from the DA. Yet we've seen an increase in the death threats, which I just described, to Alvin Bragg. Tell us more about how Trump's posts shaped the week we just saw.
Donald Trump's posts, Richard, are exactly, let me back up. Donald Trump's posts are inspiring, the acts of violence that are being carried out in his name, or the threats of violence. And this is exactly what Donald Trump wants. So I have zero faith that he's going to stop. A leopard doesn't change its spots. This guy has priors, going back, to candidate Trump with this type of rhetoric. I have a lot of faith, though, that our criminal justice system will survive this test where a former president is under multiple investigations. And by the way, this is nothing for anyone to celebrate over or destroy for. Our justice system affords Donald Trump, if he's a criminal defendant, every right that every other person in the justice system has, which means equal protection under the Constitution and due process under the rule of law.
With your experience in the impeachment trials, where do you think these particular cases are now going? 4 of them that we're watching. Again, we thought something was going to happen this past week here in New York City. We have Jack Smith, who's moving straight ahead. You can see, as we described in the introduction to our conversation, he is still undergoing yet more testimony. Who do you think will break first in terms of hearing who will be indicted?
Hard to say, Richard. They're all serious, though. And the more serious ones, of course, involve January 6th and Donald Trump inciting the mob and then aiming the mob at the Capitol. And then, of course, trying to put pressure on election officials in different states. Yeah. And then, of course, obstructing the effort to investigate that. And then the theft of top secret documents and obstructing the effort to get those back. Those are the most serious. And my experience as a former prosecutor is it's going to take time to put those together. And the prosecutor knows you almost have to be bulletproof. That's not the legal standard. Proof beyond a reasonable doubt is the legal standard. But Donald Trump is going to put an absolute pressure campaign, a public pressure campaign on any of these charges. And so you're going to have to make sure that, you can really, knock out every element of each crime in front of a jury. But again, Richard, at the end of the day, we can't control what Donald Trump says, and it's going to bring more violence. But as leaders, we can all condemn the violence. And I invite my Republican leaders who've been absolutely silent on this to condemn what Donald Trump is doing. Jim Jordan, for crying out loud, was asked about the threats the other day, and he said he didn't have his reading glasses on, so he couldn't read the threats. I mean, that's nonsense. It's time for us to be adults, stand up for not a party, but a country, because this is serious stuff. And we've seen where his rhetoric has taken us before.
Well, that's particularly relevant given your seat and what you do there in the House. When we look at what the Republicans are doing, they are reaching out into the state of New York and trying to get in the middle of a case. And you were just mentioning, as a prosecutor, this is something you probably have never seen. You know, last night, DA Bragg responded to Republicans' attacks on his investigation, the outreaches that they have been making. In a tweet to Congressman Jim Jordan, Alvin Bragg laid out clearly that it's not appropriate for Congress to interfere with pending local investigations. So, very unprecedented here, as we do see Alvin Bragg, a DA in Manhattan, having to respond to federal lawmakers repeatedly asking him if he can provide information, data, testimony, again, evidence that is not relevant to the federal government.
And Kevin McCarthy is asking Alvin Bragg to commit a felony, because that's what Alvin Bragg would be doing if he came to Congress and talked about a grand jury hearing. He'd be committing a felony because he'd be betraying the law that says you're not allowed to discuss that. But again, they don't care. And by the way, Kevin McCarthy also oversees a weaponization of government. We call it obstruction of justice committee that Jim Jordan is leading. And I can't think of a greater weaponization of government than the Congress to involve itself in a local prosecution. And this is all because McCarthy's speakership survives every day on a corrupt bargain that he has struck with Matt Gaetz, Jim Jordan, Marjorie Taylor Greene, George Santos, and others. And so he has these reoccurring payments almost every week, where to stay in power, he has to be silent or enable this type of destructive behavior rather than being an adult and speaking out against it.
Representative, I want to move to what happened yesterday in Waco, Texas, during Trump's rally. They played a song titled Justice for All. It featured a choir made up of January 6 defendants. He also had imagery of the insurrection on the big screens that were on the stage there. What is the signal for 2024, and what can Democrats do to counter this narrative?
I'll tell you what it does not signal. He's not going to win a Grammy for this, but he's glorifying violence again. And again, Richard, I come from a Republican family, and I have brothers who are in law enforcement. And, for many decades, Republicans would beat Democrats up, saying that, they back the blue and Democrats don't. Well, Democrats have stood with the January 6 officers. This effort by Trump is an effort to erase it, and my Republican colleagues are absolutely silent. The Republicans this week in Congress, Kevin McCarthy had a committee that called a witness that in the past 2 months tweeted out F the cops. So this is no longer a party that backs the blue. They back the coup, and they show that every single day. And I think it's so important for us, again, to be the adults in the room, to condemn this, to live in the great big center where most Americans live, and to show that community will win over chaos every single day.
Representative Swalwell, thank you so much. It looks like you have a lot of reading or a lot of video watching to do. I can't tell which.
Richard, this is Town Center Books and your old stomping ground in the Bay Area in Pleasanton.
Very good. All right. Well, get to it, as they say. Thank you, Representative Swalwell.